great virtues of Barack Obama is consistency. He is exactly who he's always been. He's always worked across ideological lines, partisan lines, to try and achieve progressive goals, and that's what he's going to do as president.
In fact, I've often thought the current president is really sort of Woodrow Wilson reincarnated. People admire him for the same reason they admire Woodrow Wilson. He said things that sounded so wonderful, and yet if you challenge those people by saying, name one concrete thing in the real world that became better as a result of what Woodrow Wilson did, they can't tell you.
I have to tell you, my radio audience, like 3 years ago, was so sick of hearing me talk about Woodrow Wilson. I'm like, you've got to read about this guy. You are not going to believe this is what's headed our way. And boy, here we are. And when Thomas Sowell said that, he was on my program saying that, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago. And I thought, oh my gosh. Yes, it is Woodrow Wilson. We're going to get into comparing some of the stuff here in just a second on Woodrow Wilson and what's happening. But I want to take you here. When was the last time, when's the last time our egghead panel read Walter Lippmann and the Phantom Public? This is from 1926. And while I was trying to study up on the progressives, I don't know, this is a couple of years ago, I read this, and this is the book that finally made me put it down and say, I can't read these people anymore. This talks about, with contempt, people. That people are just too stupid, and we've got to breed their stupidity out of them, and there's got to be some sort of genetic thing that we can tweak or work. And I appeal to the microbiologist to be able to find what it is. And he then talks about eugenics. This is Mein Kampf light. Am I wrong with that idea?
No, the progressives definitely wanted to marry the perfection of individuals through genetic restructuring, eugenics, to the perfection of individuals through public policy.
Okay.
It's a two-part plan.
And this goes, Burton, this goes to the idea that there are stupid people, and we shouldn't listen to them, and there are just people that just aren't good enough to, you know, vote, et cetera, right?
Well, that's why we need to have the educated elite have significantly more power and authority. And we need to not have checks and balances, but centralize authority in the educated elite, and eugenics becomes part of this message.
Now, this isn't some crazy man. This is Walter Lippmann. Anybody? RJ, do you know who Walter Lippmann? Can you give me a real quick history, or anybody here can give me a quick history on him? Walter Lippmann?
Lippmann was very involved in the origins of the New Republic, one of the premier organs of opinion on the left. It was sort of the organ of progressive opinion. One of the interesting things about Lippmann, he lived well on into the 20th century. He, like Roscoe Pound, actually became somewhat of a critic of the progressive movement late in life. Sort of kind of saw the light. Really kind of woke up about the capacity of government to actually accomplish all these things that the progressives had in view.
But Walter Lippmann, if I'm not mistaken,
he's a Harvard grad. He's very well educated, part of the elite.
And he was, if I'm not mistaken, he had something to do with CBS as well. I think he was early on with the Columbia Broadcasting System. But he and Edward House were instrumental in the Treaty of Versailles.
Yes, they were both there.
Both there, which was with Woodrow Wilson. Yeah. They both also co-founded, if I'm not mistaken, the Council of Foreign Relations. The Council of Foreign Relations was a progressive idea of, let's take media and eggheads and figure out what the idea is, what the solution is, then teach it to the media, and then they'll let the masses know what should be done. Right?
In many ways, Lippmann is the father of modern journalism. I mean, many people kind of look at him as the father of modern journalism. And this is how we're going to teach the people where journalism changes under Lippmann, from reporting facts to starting to include editorializing.
To teach, because they, again, knew better, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
Glenn, on this question of knowing better, it's very interesting to read some things that Woodrow Wilson wrote as a young man coming out of Princeton. He was looking at the scene in American politics and saying, where's the place for people like me, for me and my educated friends? Look at politics, it's so corrupt. And that's why they looked to expert administration. They were very idealistic. They thought that would be the place where the upper and middle class, the educated people could make their mark. And it's one of the reasons why you see the progressive model have administrative power in view.
These are the people, if I'm not mistaken, Woodrow Wilson back in the 1880s and people like him, they started looking back over to Europe. As Europe was building the Statue of Liberty to teach their people, be more like America, our elites started looking over to Europe, and particularly Germany, right? And they said, we got to be more like them.
They began the PhD programs. Americans went over to Germany, received PhDs. Johns Hopkins University was established, the first PhD granting institution in the United States, based on the German model. And then we emulated the Germans. We copied them.
Which at the time, that's Marx, that's Nietzsche, that's all these really nightmarish things that turn into the Holocaust eventually.
And in terms that you were talking about fallacies in textbooks, this is part of the place where you get something called historicism, which says that there is no truth in the past. Right. There is only what you make it at the time. So don't worry too much about getting to the truth. Let's reshape history as we go.
Okay, back in just